Hey, BassGeek here, and I'm going to show you my favorite worms for bedding smallmouth and how to rig them. Alright, so if you haven't seen some of my videos, you need to watch them. This video is coming out. There is a new moon next week, and if you guys ain't out in my area or my whatever hemisphere, and you're not out looking for these big smallmouth, these big southern smallmouth on the beds, man, you're missing out on one of the funnest bites there is of the year. Now, all that being said, I want to tell you what I enjoy using to catch these big smallmouth, or lose them. If you've seen, my last video, lost a couple of 4-pounders probably. But anyway, sometimes that happens when you're using the sissy sticks. So where I'm going to start, I'm actually going to start with colors, because I don't want to run through the different types of worms and go through every single color. Generally, I'm going to use these colors, and the very first thing that you're going to notice is in a lot of the situation is that they're pretty much the same exact colors. So let's talk about colors, and then I'll talk about specific shapes of worms, and then we'll talk about how I rig them. All right, so colors. Guys, you're always going to start with a good old green pumpkin. This is a green pumpkin. Now, I know this may not necessarily look like a worm, but I'll explain this a little bit later. The next, as I lovingly refer to it, the stinky pinky. Good old pink. It is hard to go wrong when you're around smallmouth or spots when they're on the bed and you've got some dirtier water to have that pink. Now, the next color is bold bluegill. Bold bluegill, especially again when you're around those smallmouth, it's got the chartreuse, and it's also got that nice green or natural brown on the backside. Always hard to leave out the morning dawn. A great color when you've got a little bit of stain to the water. The next, and I know my buddy is going to be mad at me for showing this, so Joey, I apologize. Now, this is by Bass Munitions, and this is a color that it's a purple color. I don't know what he's calling it yet, but it's a purple worm. It's kind of like the morning dawn, but not quite. But great looking color again when you're in that little bit of clear to stain water. And last but not least, this is a color that I haven't seen anywhere else. I don't think anybody makes this color, and this is a beautiful color. I believe it's called, again, by Bass Munitions, Green Pumpkin Sky. So guys, those are the general colors that I'm going to work with. And I'll rig them a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But right now, there's about 3 different types of worms that I actually use these same colors with when they're on the beds. And it's really just a trial and error. If it's clear, I'm going to go to, the smaller baits, the green pumpkins. If, those aren't getting the bigger bites, maybe, I'm not putting as many numbers in the boat, I'm going to go with something like the Green Pumpkin Sky or the Morning Dawn, something with or the bold bluegill, something with a little bit more color, something that's really going to really tick them off, piss them off when it comes through their beds. All right, so let's talk about the different styles of worms that I use. All right, the very first worm, and this is my favorite worm in the world. I mean, really, this is one of the reasons why, I really wanted to team up with Bass Munitions, other than the awesome swim baits that he makes, and you guys know how much of a fan I am of those. But this worm right here, this is called the trip worm. Now, guys, he doesn't put salt in his baits. So one thing I'll tell you, I tell people all the time, You know, when it comes to bass munitions, Z-Man ain't the only one that floats, bro. It don't have to be Elastec to float. It just has to be salt free. As a matter of fact, this same exact worm is my favorite shaky head worm. It's one of my favorite bed and bass worm, wacky rig worms. It's one of my favorite floating worms. I use this for so many different things. Now the thing of it is, he only makes it in like a 7-inch. So you need a shorter worm, you just tear it off. Right there's your 5 3/4, 6-inch worm if you tear it off right there. I love it, and as the BassGeek drinking game goes, I love it because it's got girth. I think fish like it thicker than they like it long. You know what I'm saying? So that's why, take a drink. You know I said it. That's why I think they love the girth. And like I said, I mean, you know, it stands up on a shaky head. It stands up or floats, you know, by itself. You know, most of the time I've got to put a 5/0, you know, round bend offset worm hook in it to get it to sink properly. But guys, this is a great worm, and I like it. My favorite floating worm color, my thiolate for the largemouth if I'm around a lot of largemouth, but 90% of the time, good old stinky pinky. That's what I like to throw. All right. Now, one of the other worms, and this is called the Holston ST worm, that I like a lot. This color right here is, again, the bold bluegill. It's more of a finesse style worm, and I'll show you really the difference. You know, really finessey, really great small worm. You can Texas rig it. Great wacky or flick shake rigged. Again, we'll get to that later. And again, I'll go through it all anyway. You know, I like the same colors. The bold bluegills, the morning dawns, the purple, the watermelon sky. Same color, just a different type of worm, the Holston ST. That's kind of my go-to first two picks right there. You know, got the really finessey, if it's clear, again, green pumpkin. If we're talking about clear water and high skies like we have right now, really gonna go with that green pumpkin. That's what I like to throw. We're gonna start there. So the next style of bait, everybody knows this, it's the stick bait or the Cinco style bait. This is his GT stick. This is in bold bluegill. Now this is the 5-inch. This is the 3.5 maybe. I can't remember how big this is. And there's, you know, 2 or 3 different ways I like to rig this time of year. Wacky rig, Ned Rig. Works great. Now I will tell you again, I always want a little thicker worm, and sometimes I'll take and pinch this off just past the egg sac, and I'll put this on a Ned Rig too. Again, no salt in these, they float. So if you rig them weightless, you're gonna have to make sure you've got a heavy enough hook on there to get the fall rate that you want. But like I said, the other two is of course my Ned Rig style. Now this is another bait. It's kind of a play on camo. Again, a new color by him, me and him kind of come up with. Well, I kind of borrowed it from, again, my buddy Joey. You show me your tricks, Joey. I can't help it, man. I seen how good that looked. I had to get it made for me. But I like that color. Again, the 5-inch, I'm going to rig it 99.9% of the time. Wacky rig when they're on the beds. This is going to be 99.9% of the time. It's going to be on a Ned head of some sort of mushroom style head. And again, the same colors. We're just going to add this one into the mix. Again, I know Richard will watch this video, so make sure, Richard, you tell us what you're going to call those two new lures. Now, when we come to the Ned Rig, of course, you know, the Z-Mans, the Turd, the Pink, Generally on the Z-Mans, I mean, I keep it pretty straightforward. I go with the pink if we're in dirty water. I go with the green pumpkin black flake if we're in clear water. Now, there is a new bait, and you've seen me use this, and I really like this bait. I like the design of it because I've seen a few videos. This is called the 10,000 Fish. This is by Ketchco. It's called the Sakushi Bug. And basically it's a play on a Ned. It is I think it is a Laztec. But what I like about it is that head right there. The thing about it is I've seen a couple of videos where guys are throwing crawdads in, and what they end up doing is they tear the pinchers off, and it seems like the bass are more aggressive at hitting as we float into the woods here. They're more aggressive when hitting these baits that look like a craw when they have no claw. All right, guys, let's talk about the way I rig the Trip and the ST first. The very first way that I like to rig it is simply on a flick shake head. Now that is a weighted head. Generally I like 3/16, a 1/8 is my go-to. This is, I believe, the Mustad Weedless Wacky, I believe is what that's called. And you can notice that's actually the trip worm, but I've actually torn it off and made it a little shorter. The good thing about Richard and Bass Munitions baits are they're extremely durable. So you'll notice I don't even have an O-ring on that. But it's that worm. I'll rig that exact same way. And then again, the ST worm, the finesse worm, I'll rig the exact same way. And 99.9% of the time, when I'm rigging these two worms, that's how I'm doing it. Now, I don't generally rig them completely weightless. Again, Richard's baits float. So one of the things that I want, especially when I'm bed fishing, I really want that to stay in bottom contact as much as possible, and I want those ends to float up. Now I may just barely hop it at times, but 90% of the time, I'm dragging that worm down because I'm not sight fishing these fish. I'm looking to see where they are by, you know, hopefully telling what type of rock that they spawn on. And that just takes trial and error, getting out here on these lakes and figuring it out, what type of structure they like to spawn on. And in this lake, it's definitely a certain 1, 2, 3 types of rock. So what I do is I cast that out there and I literally just drag it, maybe very slight, I mean 1, 2, 3 inch hops at the most. Now, as far as wacky goes, generally when I'm rigging these wacky, I don't put weights on them. If I know the fish are a little shallow, or if I know I've got to get it down a little deeper, I'll put the wacky, I'll put the flick shake. I call that a flick shake head. I'll put a little weight on it, but for the most part, I'm just going to put a heavier hook on it. So a lot of times I'll go with a round bend hook instead of just your circle hooks, because again, these baits float. They're a lot more durable, but they also float. Now, the rig that I throw this on, this is the Lew's Custom Speed Spool. This is their higher end rod, or higher end reel. Really love it. It's a 6-speed reel. This is my fish sticks. You see me just buy this year. This is a 7-foot medium fast action. What is the numbers on it? It is the SB 841. Again, all this stuff will be linked in the description below. I can't talk. And I use a 10-pound Power Pro High Vis yellow braid. Now that is my backing and my main line. Then I go to about a 15-foot leader, which is a 8 to 10 pound test fluorocarbon. I think I've got Gamma on here right now. I'm trying out the Gamma. Again, all the stuff will be linked in the bottom down there. You know this stuff. But I really like this setup so far, especially for this. It's been very, very nice. Had a couple of bites on it. Haven't got to put one in the boat on it. And generally, that same setup, this same setup is what I'm going to use for my wacky rigs. The only difference is going to really be the hook. We're going to put some sort of heavier gauge hook on there for the GT sticks. Again, because they float. So generally I'm just going to use an offset worm hook. Used it for years. Or I'll use some sort of flick shake like that. But just a heavier gauge hook so I can get a little more fall out of them. But as far as the setup is going to be the exact same for both. The only difference is going to be the difference in hook based on how deep I'm fishing and how much bottom contact I'm going to want. Next is my Ned rig. And guys, really, I mean, this is pretty much the two ways I rig these baits. Rarely do I rig them Texas rig. Generally, I'm going to rig them either wacky rig or with a Shroom Style, Ned style setup. Now, the Ned that I like to use is not the finesse. I like the longer shank. I think it's called the Shroom's Head Power Finesse. It's got a longer shank hook on it. And the reason why is because I want it to come as far, as close to the tip of that bait as I can get. Because let me tell you, these smallmouth see a ton of pressure. And they will pick a bait up by the tail. I honestly think after so many hooks have come through, they know what a hook looks like and they know where not to grab the sucker. Because I have had them pick it up so many different baits by the tail. It's why a shaky head, rarely do we use a shaky head. We do sometimes, but rarely do we use a shaky head because they just tend to pick it up by the tail and take it right off the bed. You'll set the hook and there's nothing there. So the sort of Ned style setup with the mushroom head, doesn't matter if you use Z-Mans or whose ever. I do like the weedless version of it. And I actually have used this head or the weedless style version instead of the flick shakes because it's a little heavier. This is the 1/5. And again, you can see the banks that I fish. We're in the back of a cove right now. And, you know, it's still very deep, very steep banks. So the Ned is really the other way that I like to fish for these bedding smallmouth. My setup with the Ned, because again, I'm throwing a heavier version, not fishing it like you would traditionally fish a Ned. I'm not letting it kind of pendulum back. Again, we're fishing for bedding fish. I want it dragging the bottom. I want a lot of bottom contact. Because when that's in there stirring up their bed, it's pissing those smallmouth off. And that's the key to getting bit. So the rod and reel that I like, this is also my Demiki rod and reel. It's my Dropshot combo. Love this combo. This is the Lew's Mock Crush. It is a great reel for the money. I think it comes in right at about $100. Maybe a little cheaper than that now. This is also my custom speed stick, and this is the Dropshot. This is actually a medium light, but it's got an extra fast tip on it. So when those fish start to come up, the tip keeps up with them. Now on this, again, I've got the High-Vis Power Pro braid, and I've got 8-pound fluorocarbon. I think this might be Red Label. Again, I'm trying a bunch of different fluorocarbons, different lines out. So that's my combo there. This is, I believe, a 610. But that is my setup for the Ned rig, and I've caught some pretty good fish on this, whether it be Demiki or Ned rigging. Guys, that's really it. That is my bedding smallmouth go-to baits, and it really does depend. You know, it's one of those things, you just got to let the fish tell you which ones they want. You know, tone down the colors in clear water, bring up the colors in dirtier water, but have you a couple of different styles tied on, and keep you a couple of different colors in one of your pockets, and cycle through them as the day goes, as you get bit, to see which one maybe gets you more bites or gets you bit, period. That's kind of how I work the colors and how I try to figure things out. So as always, questions and comments in the comment section below. You guys know, and I mean this, man, I love talking about fishing with you guys. I love answering your questions. So put them in the comment section below. It is about to get hot, and I hope I don't miss it. I am dying to get back out here and put some big smallmouth on these worms that I showed you in this daggone boat. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell when those notifications, so you get those notifications as these videos come out. Guys, really appreciate you watching. It means more than I can tell you. And as always, you guys rock.